be up there. We should have got Andrew up there for a photo. Because what's Lambert's doing up there?
Does he want?
Of course he does. We'll do the photo afterwards, so. Did you have a photo of Canetti before? Huh? And you see, you're not grey because you don't have the hair. Two.
Can I ask you to take your places and so we can start in 15 seconds. Kolleginnen und Kollegen, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich heiße unsere Gäste für die heutige Debatte über den Klimawandel recht herzlich in unserer Mitte willkommen. Mit dem Pariser Klimaübereinkommen haben sich 195 Länder dazu verpflichtet, die Erderwärmung auf weniger als 2 Grad zu begrenzen. In Europa übernehmen die Städte und Regionen dabei eine führende Rolle. Die fast 8000 lokalen und regionalen Gebietskörperschaften, die dem Bürgermeisterkonvent unterzeichnet haben, wollen die CO2-Emissionsziele der EU noch übertreffen. Erst unlängst wurde Lissabon, dessen Bürgermeister Medina Mitglied unseres Ausschusses ist, zur grünen Hauptstadt Europas 2020 gewählt. Verkehr und Wohnungswesen energieeffizienter zu machen, die Luftverschmutzung zu verringern, Abfälle zu recyceln und die lokale Energieerzeugung zu fördern, ist für die Regionen und Städte nicht nur ökologisch, sondern auch wirtschaftlich sinnvoll. Angesichts dieses Ehrgeizes auf lokaler Ebene brauchen wir eine Klima-Governance, wenn wir die Pariser Ziele wirklich erreichen wollen. Dank des Talanoa-Dialogs werden die lokalen und regionalen Gebietskörperschaften inzwischen stärker eingebunden. Sie haben jedoch immer noch keinen offiziellen Platz am internationalen Verhandlungstisch. Wie in unserer soeben angenommenen Stellungnahme erwähnt, müssen die Anstrengungen der Regionen und Städte erfasst und berücksichtigt werden. Dazu müssen wir sie erstens in die Überwachung und die Ausarbeitung der integrierten nationalen Energie- und Klimapläne einbeziehen und zweitens gewährleisten, dass sie vollständig in die EU-Verordnung über die Governance der Energieunion einfließen. Die heutige Debatte ist hochaktuell, da die EU nun neue Ziele beschlossen hat. Die Energieeffizienz soll bis 2030 um 32,5% steigen und der Anteil der erneuerbaren Energien soll auf 32% angehoben werden, zusätzlich zur Verpflichtung, so bald wie möglich klimaneutral zu werden. Aber wir alle wissen, das reicht eigentlich nicht. Unsere Mitglieder fordern in diesem Hause ein klimaneutrales Europa bis 2050. Das ist nicht nur möglich, sondern auch nötig. Und die Zeit drängt. Daher brauchen wir noch mehr Investitionen. Die Europäische Kommission verdient Anerkennung, da sie 25% des künftigen mehrjährigen Finanzrahmens sowie 40% der Fördermittel der Investitionsoffensive für Europa für den Klimaschutz einplant. Nichtsdestotrotz wird es für die lokalen und regionalen Gebietskörperschaften aufgrund der vorgeschlagenen Kürzung der Kohäsionsfonds um 10% schwieriger, konkret Klimaschutzmaßnahmen durchzuführen. Dies erschwert auch die Unterstützung der 41 Regionen, deren Wirtschaft noch von fossilen Brennstoffen abhängig ist. Europa muss den Regionen Mittel für den Übergang zur Niedrigemissionswirtschaft an die Hand geben und dies auf eine Weise, die denjenigen, die im Kohlesektor arbeiten, neue Perspektiven bietet. Beim Klimaschutz geht es um die ökologische und wirtschaftliche Sicherung unserer Bürger. Wenn wir nicht alle gemeinsam handeln, wenn wir nicht mehr Einsatz zeigen, dann werden die Auswirkungen für die kommenden Generationen gravierend sein. Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ich hoffe, dass wir jetzt eine hochinteressante und spannende und zukunftsweisende Diskussion führen können. Und als Erstem erteile ich nun Herrn Tomáš Hrušov das Wort. Er ist ein hochrangiger Klimaexperte und dafür zuständig, die Interessenträger der Vertragsparteien und andere Interessenträger in die Klimaverhandlungen der Vereinten Nationen einzubinden. Sie haben das Wort.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends, well, let me start from thanking the committee for the invitation. I think this debate is not only timely, it's very important. Because extreme weather, slow onset events, droughts, floods, heat waves are no longer those horrible stories happening elsewhere. The Europeans experience devastating hurricanes and tornadoes, violent natural disasters, but luckily, there is still time to act, to reduce anthropogenic pressure on the environment, and we need to do so on all levels. Central governments, cities and regions must raise to the climate-related challenges. It is a real pleasure for me, in my capacity of climate champion, to address those who are championing climate action themselves. Cities and regions are planning and implementing measures and actions which are real game changers, and the reports that this committee has just adopted are clear evidences of what is possible to do on local and regional level. But the governments are responsible for a wider legal framework and high-level political support for such the actions. Distinguished colleagues, we meet today 150 days before opening of the COP24 in Katowice. What are the key tasks ahead? Conference of Parties, which means all parties, has been mandated to conclude the Paris Agreement work program and agree upon all the necessary procedures, guidelines and modalities which shall make the agreement operational. All its mechanisms and institutions must be in place after Katowice COP concludes. Paris Agreement could be agreed because a delicate balance has been struck between all countries. This is what is determining the expectations towards the entire architecture of Katowice package, as well as its completeness. Unless complete, it won't be balanced. Unless balanced, it won't be inclusive and owned by all parties. And unless party-owned, it may not be agreeable. So this is the real political and negotiation-related challenge. The entire architecture of Paris Agreement is based on sovereign decisions by countries which contribute to the achievement of the global temperature adaptation goals, as well as the goal on adequate means of implementation. No contribution, doesn't matter how big, can alone solve the climate problem, and every contribution, even the smallest, is important and meaningful. That makes the contributions coming from the local communities, from cities, from regions, so important. This is the power of collective global climate action, and Paris Agreement can only be successful if it's deployed by all, which means all countries, all cities, regions, businesses, communities and individuals. And the outcome of COP24 in Katowice, Paris Agreement Work Programme conclusion, must make it happen. transforming of a global development pattern in a way so we can achieve climate neutrality by the second half of this century, some call it zero net emission, remains the key long-term objective of the agreement. Technology and investment-driven reductions of carbon dioxide emissions must be balanced with the enhanced capacity of biosystems, of forests, soil in particular, to capture and store atmospheric carbon. And of course, growing population with limited access to water, food and energy without decent jobs may lead to international conflicts or even wars. Continued unbalanced development of a few, while too many struggle with poverty, must be replaced by universally deployed policy of sustainable transition, ensuring just and inclusive access of all to development. Such an access must offer equal opportunities to develop our homelands in a sustainable manner, using indigenous resources and traditional knowledge, respecting everybody else's sovereignty, being mindful of the existing resource limitations. Spatial planning is a prerequisite of sustainable development. Land management, investments, it's mostly in the hands of regions, and it's up to the regions and cities to maintain the balance between human, environmental, and economic dimensions of development. The economy itself cannot bloom at the expense of environment or unbearable social cost. Environmental protection cannot impede fight against poverty, and nations strive for better life. Life standards will not improve thanks to aggressive economic growth in a dirty, unhealthy environment. We know it very well in Europe. Both Paris Agreement and 2030 Sustainable Development Goals define our future actions as a framework for just, inclusive, sustainable transitions. Transitions, plural, as every policy, every measure and action needs to preserve a balance between human, environmental and economic. Losing this balance would mean losing the opportunity. Sustainability balances economy, environment and people. Climate is about balancing between atmosphere, hydrosphere, geosphere and biosphere. The people, the humanity, have damaged this balance and impeded our own ability to live healthy and peaceful life. The guidelines of Paris Agreement Work Programme, all the modalities and procedures for implementation must restore and reinforce this balance in the negotiations. A balance between adaptation and mitigation, between top-down and bottom-up, between capabilities and responsibility, between finance and action, between urgency and long-term vision. It is about trust, transparency, mutual respect, and the engagement of all. The ultimate goal of Katowice COP24 is adoption of the implementation guidelines for the Paris Agreement. Complete guidelines, which would allow for immediate operationalization of all the mechanisms and institutions of the agreement, which would allow transparent communication of efforts, facilitate understanding of action and its outcomes to both governmental and non-governmental partners. That would help to cooperate and do more, faster and better. Time for talking, well, it's in fact over. And it is time for implementation now. The impacts of climate change will not be alleviated by talking. Action by every country, by every level of government, must be the only response. No action will be possible unless Paris Agreement is finalized and fully adopted. This should be collective response to the call for more ambition. Cooperation between parties and also non-parties, supported by climate action, is what boosts collective ambition. Collectively, we can do and achieve much more than a simple sum of individual undertakings. Ladies and gentlemen, the slogan of COP24 Polish presidency is changing together. And we do hope that joint efforts can and will bring that change we need. Collectively, we have the power. Let's change the world together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khrushchev. And now it is a great pleasure for me to introduce Commissioner Canetti. He will speak about the EU climate perspectives and also about what can be done together with cities and regions. The floor is yours, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. President, honourable members. I am very pleased to be here today with you to discuss the next steps in European Union climate policy and the importance of regional and local authorities in this context. I wish to thank the Committee of Regions for the strong interest it has always shown in climate change and its unwavering support to Commission initiatives in this area. I wish to share with you two crucial and interlinked issues: what the European Union is doing to implement its climate commitments and how it can support the local and regional level of administration where many of the concrete solutions reside. The European Union was instrumental in delivering the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is and remains the first ever global and legally binding agreement for fighting climate change, and this cannot be underestimated. The European Union did not stop there. As soon as the dust had settled over the negotiations in Paris, the Commission went about with doing its homework to deliver on our commitment to reduce emissions by at least 40%. The Commission first proposed a revision of the European Union emission trading system. It then put forward the sharing proposal covering all sectors outside emission trading with national targets by 2030. And for the first time, it also covered land use change and forestry with a separate legislative proposal. Negotiations were intensive but successful, and agreements were struck in late 2017. This means that a mere 2 years after Paris, the European Union was in a position to say that not only does it have an ambitious climate target for 2030, without doubt the most ambitious of all parties to the Paris Agreement, but the European Union also has all the necessary legislation in place to deliver on this target. And in the global community, this is unique. But energy policy and climate change are intertwined. And the transition to clean energy is not only important to bring down emissions of greenhouse gases, it is a structural shift of our energy system which brings important economic and social opportunities. And this is why the Commission did not stop at climate legislation. At the end of 2016, it tabled the Clean Energy for All Europeans package, which puts in place the world's most advanced regulatory framework to enable the European Union to remain front-runner in the clean energy transition. A few weeks ago, political agreement was reached on a revised European Union Renewable Directive, setting a new binding renewable target of at least 32% for 2030, along with measures to enable further cost-effective deployment of renewables. And a deal was also reached on a new European Union energy efficiency target of 32.5% for 2013 and extending the annual savings obligation beyond 2020. Both agreements, in addition, include a possible upward revision of these targets in 2023. The importance of these two pieces of legislation is that the new targets agreed by Council and Parliament would de facto mean that the European Union would be in a position to indicate that we can raise our level of ambition and increase our target from the current at least 40% to slightly over 45% by 2030. And this will put the European Union in a very strong position in view of the next UN climate conference in Katowice, COP24. I will return to this later. But several challenges remain. And this is notably the case for transport, where emissions have not decreased since 1990 and even seem to be picking up. And this is why the Commission has proposed ambitious action by 2030 and CO2 emission targets for new cars and vans, and also, for the first time ever, CO2 targets for heavy-duty vehicles are on the table. And we expect to close these negotiations by the end of the year. Also, it is vital that we maintain coherence of energy and climate policies. And just 2 weeks ago, European Union decision makers struck a deal on the Energy Union governance. And I welcome the interesting Committee of the Regions opinion from the rapporteur, Mr. Cooper, on this issue. The governance regulation will not only streamline existing energy and climate legislation, but it will also provide crucial certainty for investors in the energy and climate sectors. And Member States will have to organize multi-level climate and energy dialogues, engaging, amongst others, regional and local authorities. And this is an opportunity for all to influence the development of the Energy Union and the different Member States' integrated energy and climate action plans. And I am assured that members of the Committee of Regions will be active in this context. This legislation will help cities and communities develop and implement ambitious local energy and climate strategies. And in parallel, we continue to support dedicated non-legislative initiatives, notably through the European Union Covenant of Measures. I would like now to give a brief overview of another vital component of our support for climate action: how the European Union can support the local and regional level in its efforts to curb emissions and move along the path of energy transition. The financial support under the next European Union long-term budget, the MFF for 2021 to 2027, of course, plays a vital role in this context. Investment is an important part of our effort to make the energy transition come true. And to reach our energy and climate objectives for 2030, about €379 billion investments are needed annually over the period 2021-2030. And cities, regions and communities play a key role in aggregating smaller projects into sizable packages and in mobilizing the significant amount of investment needed for a successful clean energy transition. The MFF proposal sets a more ambitious goal for climate mainstreaming across all the European Union programs, with a target of 25% of expenditure contributing to climate objectives. And this means that programs which have been contributing substantially to these objectives will continue to make a strong support to the energy transition. And this is particularly true of the European Regional Development Fund and of the Cohesion Fund, which are expected to contribute with 30% and 37% to climate-relevant spending, respectively, therefore providing regions with substantial means to support investment in the field of energy efficiency and renewables. The Connecting Europe facility is proposed to contribute 60% of this budget to climate objectives. €8.65 billion are proposed to be allocated to the energy sector, and this represents almost doubling the power of the current Connecting Europe facility. It will bring priority to electricity projects and open new windows to cover also cross-border renewable energy projects. In addition, we propose a considerable increase in the budget available for strategic investments in the energy sector through the Investment EU programme, the successor of the European Fund for Strategic Investment, which is expected to contribute 30% of its overall investments to climate objectives. A large part of research and innovation funding should also be allocated to support innovation in clean energy technologies. Horizon Europe will contribute to climate mainstreaming by 35% of its total, and will have a dedicated funding for climate, energy and mobility with a budget of €50 billion. Everyone should be able to benefit from the clean energy transition. That is why the European Union will both support front runners in showing the way and providing new innovative solutions, but also help those catching up by building the necessary capacity where we need to narrow the gap. The Commission has launched specific additional initiatives to support the most vulnerable regions: the Coal Regions in Transition Initiative and the Clean Energy for European Union Islands Initiative, as well as Energy Poverty Observatory, all with a strong focus on regions and municipalities as key actors. Also, the new Clean Energy Transition sub-programme proposed under LIFE, with a budget of €1 billion, will aim at capacity-building actions to help public and private actors drive the transition. To sum up, the next long-term European Union budget is a crucial tool for the low-carbon transformation, and the Commission will strongly defend all the climate elements to ensure they are maintained. Finally, looking ahead, 2018 is a critical year for climate action. As it was already mentioned, talks are building up to the COP24 conference in Katowice in December, where parties are set to adopt a detailed rulebook for implementing the Paris Agreement. But alongside the negotiations, the Talanoa dialogue is also taking place, offering the first chance at political level to take stock of the efforts against the agreed goals and discuss ways to increase global ambition. The Commission is committed to this process, and last month we held an European Union for Talanoa conference with nearly 600 participants from governments, civil society, cities and regions. A key message of the event was the need to identify long-term visions to guide and empower business and citizens. Looking beyond 2030, European Union leaders have invited the Commission to present a proposal for a strategy for long-term European Union greenhouse gas emission reduction for 2050, in line with the Paris Agreement and taking into account the national plans prepared by Member States. The Commission intends to table the long-term strategy already in the autumn of 2018 and in time to enrich the discussions for COP24 and to fuel a wider debate within the European Union. Our assessment will look at various pathways for deep and economy-wide decarbonisation in the coming decades. A public consultation will be launched in the coming weeks, and I encourage you all to provide your views. And we will hold a high-level event on the strategy on the 10th and 11th of July in Brussels, where we will seek also input from cities and regions. Honourable members, local action and innovation are fundamental for achieving the European Union climate and energy goals. And the Commission is working to support our cities and regions as much as possible in this process. Thank you for your attention.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kommissar. Und als nächstes spricht nun zu uns Herr Ashok Siriran, Oberbürgermeister von Bonn, Stadt, in der im letzten Jahr die Weltklimakonferenz stattfand. Herr Oberbürgermeister, erlauben Sie mir zuallererst, Ihnen im Namen des Ausschusses der Regionen recht herzlich zu Ihrer Wahl zum Präsidenten des Internationalen Rates für kommunale Umweltinitiativen ICLEI zu gratulieren, und wir freuen uns sehr auf die Zusammenarbeit. Sie haben das Wort.
Vielen Dank, Präsident Lamberts, sehr geehrter Kommissar Canetti, Herr Kruschtow, Herr Skiba, liebe Mitglieder des Rates der Regionen in Europa. Als Oberbürgermeister der Bundesstadt Bonn und als Präsident von ICLEI, Städte für Nachhaltigkeit, freue ich mich sehr, heute hier zu Ihnen sprechen zu können. Wie Sie wissen, koordiniert ICLEI auch die Gruppe der Städte und Regionen in den Klimaverhandlungen. Daher möchte ich gerne meine Bilanz der vergangenen 23. Weltklimakonferenz bei uns in Bonn aus einer etwas breiteren lokalen Perspektive ziehen. Die mit dem Pariser Klimaabkommen eingeläutete neue Ära der nicht vertragsstaatlichen Akteure, der Non-Party-Stakeholder in den globalen Klimaprozessen wurde in Bonn im vergangenen Jahr deutlich sichtbar. Städte und Regionen sind ganz vorne mit dabei. Zum Klimagipfel der Städte und Regionen begrüßten das Land Nordrhein-Westfalen und die Stadt Bonn über 1000 Teilnehmende, davon 300 Bürgermeisterinnen, Bürgermeister und Regionenchefs, erstmals im offiziellen Konferenzprogramm und erstmals auf dem offiziellen Gelände der Klimakonferenz. In ihrer Erklärung, dem Bonn-Fidschi Commitment, sprachen sich die Teilnehmenden und deren Netzwerke für eine stärkere Beteiligung der subnationalen Ebene an Ausgestaltung und Umsetzung des Pariser Klimaabkommens aus. Sie unterstrichen ihr Engagement mit über 20 konkreten Initiativen, die teils bereits vor 2020 Wirkung entfalten können. Natürlich freut es mich, dass der Europäische Rat in seiner Bewertung der COP23 diese Erklärung positiv erwähnt hat. Der Ausschuss der Regionen und die Umweltkommission haben die Inhalte und Leitgedanken des Bonn-Fidschi Commitments in dem heute vorgestellten Positionspapier aufgegriffen. Es zeigt weitere Perspektiven dafür auf, wie aus Sicht der Städte und Regionen eine Mitwirkung am internationalen Klimaprozess im Geiste des Talanoa-Dialogs erfolgen kann. Der Dialog ist die Gelegenheit, über staatliche Ebenen und Strukturen hinweg gemeinsam zu planen und zu handeln. Einen solchen Prozess haben wir Städte und Regionen seit langem gefordert. Deshalb haben wir in über 50 Ländern inzwischen Beiträge zum Talanoa-Dialog geleistet, die, wenn dieses Verfahren weitergeführt wird, zu echten Verbesserungen der nationalen Klimaziele weltweit beitragen können. Vielversprechende Ansätze kommen unter anderem aus Ecuador, Indonesien, Kanada, Finnland, Südafrika oder Norwegen. Auch in Bonn habe ich im April eine Talanoa-Dialogveranstaltung mit Bürgermeistern aus aller Welt ausgerichtet. Die Europäische Union trägt jedoch eine besondere Verantwortung für die Umsetzung ihres eigenen Klimaziels und dafür, die Messlatte höher zu legen. Und die beiden Beiträge, die wir vor der jetzigen Diskussion gehört haben, haben den Weg in die richtige Richtung gezeigt. Der erste europäische Talanoa-Dialog im Juni hat hohes Potenzial, in den Mitgliedstaaten Folgeprozesse anzuregen. Die EU kann jetzt ihre Mitglieder einladen, den Dialog weiterzuführen, die subnationale Ebene als Partner einzubeziehen und gemeinsam die Ziele höher zu stecken. Ihre einende Kraft wird gebraucht, um die Mitgliedstaaten rechtzeitig vor der neuen Stufe der Klimaziele 2020 zu mehr Ambition und mehr Ebenenkooperation zu ermutigen. Im polnischen Katowice liegt unser nächster Meilenstein. Und auch dort sollten Kommunen und Regionen, wie in Bonn 2017, integrierter Bestandteil der COP24 sein. Städte und Regionen in vielen EU-Staaten stehen bereit, mit ihren Regierungen an der Umsetzung des Pariser Klimaabkommens zu arbeiten. Und um den Klimaprozess erfolgreich voranzutreiben, brauchen wir transparente Informationen aus allen Ebenen, nicht nur der nationalen. Die Instrumente dafür gibt es. Im Bonn-Fidschi-Commitment ist das deutsche Projekt SDG-Indikatoren für Kommunen genannt, das Beiträge zur Minderung von CO2-Emissionen in europäische und internationale Systeme einspeisen will. Bereits 2008 rief die EU mit engagierten Städten den Konvent der Bürgermeister für Klima und Energie ins Leben. Mit dem Pariser Klimaabkommen wurde gemeinsam mit dem Compact of Mayors aus dem EU-Konvent der weltweit engagierte globale Konvent, ein Schritt, der die Sichtbarkeit von Städten und Regionen deutlich erhöhte. Seit 2010 führt ICLE das Carbon Climate Registry. Es listet als globale Berichtsplattform Initiativen, Verpflichtungen und Strategien von über 1000 Städten und Regionen aus 86 Ländern auf. Erfasst sind Emissionssenkungsziele von 5,6 Gigatonnen bis 2020 und 26,8 Gigatonnen bis 2050. Wir alle kennen die große Lücke zwischen den nationalen Klimazielen und dem, was nötig ist, um gut unter 2 Grad Erderwärmung zu bleiben. 26,8 Gigatonnen sind viel, doch das Potenzial ist weitaus größer. Deshalb sollten neben den LDCs künftig auch die Locally Determined Contributions sichtbar gemacht werden. Der Geist des Pariser Klimaabkommens ist Kooperation, Koalition und Dialog. Die Städte und Regionen sind dafür gut aufgestellt. Jedoch, um unsere gemeinsamen Klimaziele zu erreichen, benötigen wir weiterhin und ganz besonders jetzt die Unterstützung der Europäischen Union und unserer nationalen Regierungen. Ich danke Ihnen, dass Sie mir zugehört haben.
Vielen Dank, Herr Oberbürgermeister. Und nun erteile ich das Wort Herrn Mariusz Skiba, dem stellvertretenden Bürgermeister von Katowice, jener Stadt, die im Dezember dieses Jahres die nächste Weltklimakonferenz der Vereinten Nationen beherbergen wird. Sie haben das Wort.
Dankeschön. Thank you. Mr. President, I would like to thank you also for inviting distinguished delegates, distinguished guests, I would like to share you some information about my city, about the city which promotes itself with the slogan for a change, the city which is in a certain process, the city which is hosting the coming COP24. The Katowice's objectives for the COP24 is to show the Katowice as one of the most dynamically developing city in Poland. We want to show you a safe, friendly, and really green city. The city, as a metropolis center, underwent a deep restructuring process in a short time. The high-tech sector services have become the mainstream of municipal economy. Culture is another solid pillar of the town, which was confirmed by the status of creative city and the area of music awarded to Katowice by UNESCO. Historically, Katowice has always been associated with coal mining and heavy engineering, like the whole Silesia region. Both revitalization and reindustrialization processes changed Katowice spectacularly, as it has become a city of intensive developing technologies, business sector, banking sector, academic and business tourism center. The main promotional slogan for COP24 is Black to Green. We want to show everyone this change. Of course, following the modern paths of development, Katowice doesn't forget its heritage. This approach is best illustrated with Katowice heart-shaped logo design, which consists of two parts. Its black base depicts the industrial heritage of Katowice, while the upper multicolor layer represents the current potential of the city and the accepted development strategy. One of the greatest assets of the city is the recognition of Katowice as the heart and capital of the first Polish metropolis. Thanks to the joint plans and activities, the attempts to consolidate the city's leadership position in the part of Europe are becoming more successful. As a result, the city is more effective in applying for organization of important cultural, sports, and business events, which contributes to the city prestige. The main challenges for the city in transition, I think that in most of examples are the same, but in the example of Katowice are as follows. The changing the way of heating for buildings, transport, municipal greenery. At the same time, for all tasks related to the implementation of the low-carbon economy plan, where we have defined tasks related to the reduction of emission from fuel combustion for the amount of 565 million Polish zlotys, it's around 140 million euros. We are running the current city strategy in relation to helping a person with lower wealth, as well as intensive control related to the combustion of solid fuels. Katowice is constantly striving to expand the existing transport system of the city. Although we do not have the metro, we have a very well-developed public transport system. The company owning the city public bus transport investing in a new rolling stock. The tram company is modernizing its fleet and is planning to build new 2 sections of tram lines in the nearest future. In addition, the city started implementation of system of 4 integrated interchanges and construction of international bus stations. In the field of air and climate protection, the city of Katowice participates in 2 international projects financed from Interreg Europe and Interreg Central Europe programs, which show our activities and the need of knowledge. The first of them, MOLOG, is focused on monitoring the implementation of low emission economy plan and developing a model of implementation in the city's system monitoring energy and water carriers in the public buildings of the city of Katowice. The second, AWIRE, will allow the city to perform a pilot installation of 127 air pollution sensors and 154 information screens. In addition, as a part of the project, the short-term action plan was updated. Taking care of the well-being of our residents, our green heritage, forests and reserves, we reclaim new areas and enlarge the green areas of the city. By implementing investments projects, we often use elements of green roofs and green walls. Parallel, the city of Katowice will work together as a part of Urban Transition Alliance. We see many similarities with other cities. For example, with Dortmund and Essen. 100 years ago, the rural region was the largest industrial region in Europe, based on mines and smelters. Today, the factories have been transformed into attraction for tourists. Nowadays, the city of Katowice faces the same challenges on a way to become a sustainable city. And the last but not the least, what the EU needs to do in the issue of financing. Of course, we want to cope with those challenges, and we need external support. Without European funds, the current change would be impossible. The future and development of the city is also connected with access to external support. In particular, the change of energy sources, rational energy consumption, the development of the public transport system, and the implementation of electromobility are very costly tasks. Without the support of the European Union or its limitation, moving to a low-carbon city will be very difficult. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Et maintenant, j'invite nos membres à prendre la parole. Il y a 13 inscrits. C'est très bien, mais ça fait à nouveau appel à la discipline sur le temps de parole, mais je sais que tout le monde va la respecter. Et en tout premier lieu, notre orateur, Cor Lammers.
Dear Special Envoy for Climate Change, Mr. Khrushchev, dear Commissioner Canetti, dear Mayor Sridharan, and dear Deputy Mayor Skiba. Before I begin, let me give you a warm welcome to the European Committee of the Regions, not only on behalf of the EPP Group, but also as Chair of the ENVI Commission, the ENVI Commission for Environment, Climate Change and Energy. My special congratulations go to Mayor Sridharan for being elected the new president of ICLE. I'm happy to see a strong European leadership in ICLE, and there's good cooperation between the Committee of the Regions and ICLE. Thank you all for your inspiring interventions on the state of play of climate in the EU ahead to the COP24 meeting in Katowice. Dear colleagues, ahead to Katowice, we demonstrate political leadership, clear strategy and adequate resources to achieve ambitious targets. According to the last EU survey on climate change from March 2017, 74% of the EU citizens consider climate change to be a very serious problem, while 92% see it as a serious problem. So we know where we are in terms of climate, and we know that the cost of no action is too high, and we feel the urgency to act. And we know where we want to go. The Paris Agreement has set the ambitious objective of keeping a global temperature rise well below the 2 degrees or even below 1.5 degrees. Now we need to agree on how we want to reach there, by agreeing on the so-called Paris rulebook and translate it into the EU national, regional and local policies. So how do we want to get there? First of all, we need a clear framework that will give the political leaders, business and citizens a strong signal where to invest. We need to ensure that the recently agreed energy efficiency and the renewable energy targets are coherent with other policies, so that we all move in the same direction. And for this to happen, we need better coordination with all the relevant actors. Secondly, we need true multi-level climate governance. We are glad that since the Paris Agreement, there is a positive trend to be more inclusive. Therefore, local and regional authorities should get their seat in the UN negotiation table. And third, we need proper financial and human resources. With the ongoing debate on the EU budget post-2020, we need to make sure we have adequate resources to meet the current transition challenges: energy transition, mobility transition, circular economy transition, transition from grey to green and blue infrastructure, and so on. They all have direct impact on climate change. A territorial approach is really important here, as those transitions will be tackled differently in the urban and rural areas. We also need to find ways how to further stimulate those that are pioneers, as well as to motivate those that are lagging behind in those transitions. Therefore, the next EU budget needs to be better used and in a more integrated way to address the challenges of those transitions. To conclude, I would like to address here a question to the ICLEI President, Mr. Sridharan. What is the state of play of the Bonn-Fiji commitment now? How can the Committee of the Regions join the forces with ICLEI to further reinforce the voice of regions and cities in the climate negotiations at the COP24? And I would like to ask the Commissioner Canetti, in relation to the Energy Union governance, to have one representative from the Committee of the Regions in the future Energy Union Committee, so that the local and regional authorities of the whole EU are represented in the institutional level. I wish you all good preparations for Katowice. Powodzenia.
Merci beaucoup. Le prochain orateur est notre collègue André van den Nadort.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Canetti, Mr. Khrushchev, Mr. Sheridan and Mr. Skiba, as my colleague Mr. Lama said, a very warm welcome to the Committee of the Regions from the PES group also. It's good to see you, Mr. Canetti, back here in the Committee of the Regions and with some good news on the agreements recently reached on essential elements of the EU's energy and climate governance. As stated on many occasions here in this House, the overwhelming majority of the Committee of the Regions want ambitious actions on climate change, and we have pledged many times that we think that targets of 50% of CO2 reduction with 40% targets for renewable energy and energy efficiency are feasible. But we are all politicians, and we know that politics is about reaching compromises, bringing all interests and making sure that everybody can support and implement the final agreements. And in this spirit, we welcome the agreements reached, even though they are less ambitious than we would have wanted. But after all, nobody prevents member states, regions or cities from doing more. In the agreements, which will hopefully be confirmed by the co-legislators soon, we recognize that our social democratic demands to address energy poverty and the need to support a just transition for regions dependent on fossil fuel industries have been taken up. We are ready to cooperate in any form necessary to bring about concrete results. We are now looking forward to see the Member States' national climate and energy plans by the end of this year. And in the absence of binding targets at national level for the energy efficiency and renewables, it's even more important that those national plans are sound, realistic and ambitious. And to make sure that they can be, it's essential that local and regional governments are closely involved in drafting these plans, and in cooperation with the national and EU institutions in implementing them. We have just voted on Andrew Cooper's opinion on COP24, where we ask again for a system of locally or regionally determined contributions to complement the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs. Of course, much of the current thinking and the course activity is taken up by the debates about the multi-financial framework, the MFF. Here the situation is, I would say, mixed. An increase of financial resources earmarked for climate action is welcomed, but this may not be enough to make the EU budget fully Paris-proof and compatible with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We will also have to address the important issue of finally phasing out harmful subsidies to fossil fuels, but also looking after the regions where this necessary transition will have disproportionate economic impact. And therefore we need to invest into a just transition that creates new green jobs and perspectives both for the regions as for the individual citizens. I would like to hear from you, Mr. Canetti. What is your ideas about the next steps? That is, the formulation of a comprehensive vision of the EU's energy and climate future 2013 and beyond. Now that some of the essential building blocks have been put in place and ahead of European elections in 2019, where the EU's role on fighting climate change will be competing with many other issues for public attention and political creativity. More concretely, I would also like to ask you how you think the European Commission may be able to cooperate and support our delegation of 8 members who will be attending the COP24 in Katowice later this year. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Michiel Schäfer.
Thank you, Chairman. I am, on behalf of the ALDE fraction, very pleased that the mayors of Bonn and of Katowice are with us to provide a clear time frame for proceeding further and making progress. We are welcoming the Commissioner, Canetti, for creating a framework, and of course the work of the Special Envoy to glue all this together. I'm also saying here that my city of Nijmegen, where I live, is the Green Capital of Europe this year, the smallest city ever having that award. And I can also tell that the mayors of the Green Capitals are very much willing to work towards the Katowice conference to create a coalition of cities that want to move ahead with all the others. The province of Gelderland I'm governing has received yesterday the EER award for having an economic policy that is fully compatible with the SDGs. And that's also a source of inspiration. Local authorities, regional authorities have to lead by example. We have just adopted a half an hour ago a report on how public procurement and public transport can contribute significantly by being an example for the Paris objectives and indeed to move to zero emission public transport. That's an important target that has been set in the report, and of course this report balances 2 elements. One of creating a single market for zero mobility, while at the same time recognizing subsidiarity and the need of each public authority to have its own mix of policy instruments. What is also important in order to move ahead is basically to have a framework in which each municipality, each region makes its own plans to contribute to the Paris Agreement. It should create a context for citizens and companies and cooperatives of taking initiatives, of going ahead to make their own windmills or to set their own solar panel on their roof. And of course to have a broader policy that is not only a policy of climate change, but also circular economy, protein transition, using the bicycle. So it is a much broader thing than only climate change alone. There are 3 things of concern I would like to mention. One is to engage the industry to be part of the transition, for example, by using the Vanguard network of regions. The second, to create a skill base, to reinvest in skills in Europe at technical level so that the plumber, the electrician can be part of the transition. And finally, to have a financial market that is not only looking at short-term gains, but at long-term investments. And of course, European tools are, of course, most welcome to support that. So the agenda is broad, the urgency is high. Let's move together.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est à notre collègue Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, on behalf of the EA Group, let me first thank you for your presence today, which is very timely as the EU reaffirms its commitment to tackle climate change ahead of the next COP. Over the last year, starting with the COP in Warsaw in 2013, even before the adoption of the Paris Agreement, we have seen a rising status for local and regional governments. This was evident last year in Bonn with the launch of the Talanoa Dialogue and the Bonn-Fiji commitment of local and regional leaders. The key role of local and regional authorities in the implementation of the Paris Agreement has been highlighted in various European Parliament reports. A few minutes ago, we have just adopted the opinion on climate governance, for which I am the rapporteur, that sets out our position ahead of COP24 and recalls the time has come for full acknowledgement of climate multi-level governance, not simply dialogue, and for the role of local and regional authorities to be formalised. The recently agreed EU targets and the governance regulation are a step forward to achieve the Europe energy transition. Still, these are not at the level required to achieve the Paris climate goals. Nationally determined contributions fall short of limiting global temperature increases to well below 2 degrees, let alone 1.5 degrees. In order to bridge the emissions gap, we need a system of locally and regionally determined contributions that would complement the nationally determined contributions. Without a proper partnership between local and national governments, even these goals will be difficult to achieve. We shall ensure that national climate plans include actions undertaken at sub-national levels of government as a way to help track the progress towards achieving nationally determined contributions. Actions that are not measured are not acknowledged, nor encouraged or valued. Local actions can be the difference between success and failure. We hope that the upcoming European Commission long-term strategy will underline the decisive role of local and regional authorities to achieve zero emissions by 2050 and propose permanent mechanisms to enhance their participation in decision-making processes. Commissioner, we certainly welcome dialogues with subnational levels of government. They are of great importance as they allow local and regional authorities to share their ambitions and positions, but dialogues are not monologues. Yes, we need to be heard, but we also need to be responded to as well. We expect local and regional authorities to be truly involved in the development of national plans for their contributions to be taken into account in the governance of the Energy Union. Similarly, at the global level, we believe that the outcomes of the Talanoa Dialogue should make their way through the COP negotiating text and should not just be a one-off, nice storytelling exercise. It should continue beyond COP24. To conclude, Commissioner, as you rightly said, more needs to be done collectively to bring us on track with the Paris objectives. We fully subscribe to this and we count on you to ensure the principle of multi-level governance and genuine partnership is fully applied. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est à notre collègue Oldrich Vlasak.
Dear Commissioner, honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, last year as ECR we held a meeting in Poland where we discussed local and regional climate action with national Polish politicians. This meeting helped us to better understand similarities and differences between our countries. Upper Silesia in Poland, where the next COP climate conference will take place, just like parts of Bohemia and Moravia in my home country, the Czech Republic, is traditionally associated with high emissions. In this part of Europe, we have to be realistic about the pace of change. We are not in a position to cut out coal completely in the short term. This would lead to blackouts and the loss of thousands of jobs. Let us not forget that the transformation of the Ruhr, the former coal mining region in Germany, took more than 60 years. Central Eastern European countries started reducing their emissions only after 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell. We are quickly catching up with Western environmental standards. In the Czech Republic, in 2014, our emissions were 37% lower than those recording in 1990, while the EU average was only 19%. The EU energy landscape is so diverse that it simply doesn't make sense to set binding environmental targets at the European level. Let's work bottom up and take into account regional specificities. That is why we welcome Commission's Core Regions in Transition platform that Commissioner just mentioned. Finally, many of our cities and regions are also suffering from the increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters that is resulting from climate change. We need to focus more on increasing our disaster resilience as part of our climate action work. Thank you very much for attention.
Merci beaucoup. Et maintenant, la parole est à notre premier vice-président, Markku Markkula.
Dear Commissioner Canetti, mayors of Bonn and Katowice, let me first stress that when we talk about cities and regions with respect to climate change, so we need to more and more look for local industry, small and large universities, even schools, all educational establishments, all the citizens, because only through them we can make our targets a reality. Committee of the Region, we advocate a lot of change in the global climate governance regime to ensure that local and regional authorities will be recognized and actually take themselves a strong role as formal partners in the global governance structure and measures what we need. After all, more than 70% of climate change mitigation and up to 90% of climate change adaptation measures are undertaken by local and regional governments in collaboration with their industry and other local actors. In this context, the recent Talanoa dialogue, especially a couple of weeks ago here in Brussels, where I was contributing as well as the moderator of the afternoon session. So it proved very clearly that this platform and this kind of activities are needed to bring the actors together. And here I refer also that in parallel with that in the Scandinavia we have the special kind of more industry-driven part of this Talanoa conference. And there I have now the question to Commissioner Canetti especially, because in the Nordic we have created a special climate leadership coalition driven especially by the businesses, financing sector and NGOs. And we have started to support that strongly by our cities and regions. So let's do more that kind of collaboration. And let me just refer two of the key sentences from that Nordic business group. So Markus Wallenberg, the chairman of Skandinaviska Enskilda Banken, stressed heavily that Nordic financial sector is a pioneer in green and sustainable financing, but much more needs to be done and much higher EU ambition level needs to be agreed. And then Jorma Ollila, the former chairman of Nokia and Royal Dutch Shell, stressed heavily that the emission trading systems to get sufficient price on carbon and for accelerating investments need to be created. We need to focus to make the business sector really seeing this as an instrument for their own new business development, and that means a lot of governance structures as well. I refer as well strongly to the Committee of the Region. Our members Many of us are the ambassadors on the climate change, especially with the governance of mayors, and there we have started a lot of key activities. Good example, my own city, Espoo, we put our own, by the City Council, decision target year of carbon neutral 2030, the whole Helsinki region for 2035 to be carbon neutral. But that means really combining, getting everyone on board to operate on that. And here I link this as well to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and all of those 17 goals. So how to have this real movement globally, knowing on in 2 weeks' time, well, many of us will be in New York on launching the role of cities as pioneers on this. So Bonn being one, my city being one of those, so we'll really have a role to play. But let me conclude, but with respect to MFF, so it is crucial the role of EU financing, but always that's only catalyzing and enabling. So the most investments need to come from local, public, private investments, and that is our target. And on that, so digitalized platforms, creating the new role for cities on all of this, integrating synergic activities, it is crucial, and it means that we need to work more on these digitalized platforms and entrepreneurial mindset to get all citizens involved. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Nous arrivons maintenant à 6 interventions complémentaires, chaque fois prévues pour 1 minute. Et nous commençons par l'intervention de notre collègue Guillermo Martínez.
Sí, muy buenos días, presidente, comisario, miembros del comité. Intervengo en este debate estratégico y de innegable actualidad e importancia en nombre del Gobierno del Principado de Asturias, una región del norte de España con un marcado carácter industrial. Quiero manifestar en primer término que mi región no está en contra de una economía más limpia y menos contaminante. No somos negacionistas, estamos comprometidos de manera firme en la lucha contra el cambio climático. Pero a la vez debemos decir que la cuestión no es si estamos a favor o en contra de reducir las emisiones de CO2 o de fomentar las energías renovables, sino en cómo hacerlo, en cómo ordenar esa transición necesaria sin causar daños irreparables, en cómo afrontar esa transformación que es compleja y tiene impactos directos sobre nuestra industria. Esta posición no es sinónimo de anclaje al pasado ni incapacidad de adaptación. Insisto, no somos una región refractaria al cambio. Es defender nuestro futuro con transiciones justas y ordenadas. Muestra de nuestra disposición al cambio es nuestra participación en las regiones de iniciativa de vanguardia y también en la plataforma de las regiones mineras en transición. Nadie discute el final del camino. Lo que discutimos es el camino a seguir, puesto que el punto de partida no es homogéneo para todas las regiones. Nosotros somos una de las pocas regiones que cumple ese porcentaje del 20% del Producto Interior Bruto en relación al sector industrial. Deben de ser...
Oui, je demandais de conclure parce que le temps de parole est à nouveau dépassé de presque 30 secondes, ça ne va pas. Hein. Merci beaucoup. Le prochain orateur, c'est notre collègue Robert Negoisia.
Domnule președinte, bună ziua tuturor. Domnule comisar, stimați colegi, îmi face mare plăcere și mă bucur foarte mult că avem o astfel de dezbatere în cadrul Comitetului Regiunilor. Sunt mândru că sunt european și că noi în Europa avem aceste standarde înalte. Încercăm și sper să ne iasă să fim campioni în tot ce înseamnă protecția mediului în lume și acest lucru trebuie să ne facă foarte responsabili, în sensul în care trebuie, pe de o parte, așa cum și colegii, vorbitorii dinainte au spus, de îmbinarea protecției mediului și cu competitivitatea industriei. Cu atât mai important este acest subiect, cu cât anul viitor îmi face mare plăcere să avem întâlnirea pe acest subiect, întâlnirea cu setplanul și vreau să-i mulțumesc domnului comisar Canetti, întâlnire care va fi în București, împreună cu, o premieră va fi împreună cu Comisia NV și vreau să mulțumesc de asemenea domnului președinte Lamberts pentru că a fost de acord și că a susținut ca această comisie să fie în România și domnul președinte al comisiei, domnul Lamers. Cu asta fiind spuse,
Merci beaucoup. Si le temps est passé, il faut conclure. Merci beaucoup. La parole est à notre collègue Jeannette Balgeux.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Regional Minister of South Holland, I welcome a higher ambition on climate action. Coastal regions are particularly vulnerable and the scale of the challenges they face is huge. We applaud a higher priority given to the climate action in the MFF proposals. As a member of the Committee of the Maritime Region, CPMR, my region supports the letter that the Higher Ambition Coalition sent to the heads of state in June. The coalition emphasized that the reap of benefits for decarbonization, Europe needs to stimulate rapid and long-term investment in the energy transition, particularly in efficiency and renewables. At the same time, the EU should incentivize transformation in the transport and agriculture sector, protect and restore our national ecosystems and support the transition of regional and local economies through the action of on the spot. Regions and cities are important for delivering the European agenda. After all, combined funds and innovation play a key role in unlocking economic potential of investing in climate mitigation and adaptation.
Merci. La parole est à notre collègue Anthony Buchanan. Qui ne semble pas être là, alors nous passons au prochain. C'est notre collègue Sirpa Erstel.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja, hyvät jäsenet. Komissaari Canetti totesi puheenvuorossaan, että energiapolitiikka ja ilmastonmuutos nivoutuvat yhteen. Myös kiertotalous ja ilmastonmuutos vaikuttavat toisiinsa. Ilman tehokkaampia uusiutumattomien raaka-aineiden hyödyntämistä emme tule saavuttamaan Pariisin sopimuksessa asetettua päästövähennystavoitetta ilmaston lämpenemisestä. Yhä kasvava ja valitettavasti yhä enemmän jokaisen arjessa näkyvä jäte on kertakäyttömuovi. Meriin ja järviin päätynyt muovi hajoaa mikromuoviksi, joka joutuu kalojen ravinnoksi ja lopulta meidän omille lautasillemme kalaa syödessämme. Olemme siis tyytyväisiä täällä alueiden komiteassa, että komissio on laatinut direktiiviehdotuksen kertakäyttömuovien käytön vähentämisestä ja korvaamisesta uusiutuvilla raaka-aineilla, kuten puukuiduilla. Olen itse valmistelemassa alueiden komitean lausuntoa tästä komission direktiiviehdotuksesta ja uskon, että alueiden komitean jäsenillä on paljon kannustavia esimerkkejä muoviongelman ratkaisemisesta. Kiitoksia.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est à notre collègue Witold Stepien.
Panie komisarzu, panie przewodniczący, jestem marszałkiem województwa łódzkiego w Polsce. Chciałem powiedzieć dwa słowa o tym, czego potrzebujemy i czego robimy w ochronie klimatu. Łódzkie to elektrownia Bełchatów oparta na węglu brunatnym, największy emitent zanieczyszczeń w Europie, ale też największy w Europie i chyba w świecie producent energii elektrycznej. To ponad 8 000 ludzi bezpośrednio tam zatrudnionych, a również 80 000 ludzi pracujących w firmach związanych z tym potężnym przedsięwzięciem energetycznym. Zmiany ograniczenia emisji nie da się zrobić bez określenia jasnej polityki, bez określenia narzędzi, bez wsparcia ze strony i władz krajowych, i Unii Europejskiej. Tak jak powiedział pan komisarz, konieczne są fundusze. Konieczny jest fundusz spójności, wsparcie finansowe, wsparcie władz lokalnych.
Merci beaucoup. Et le dernier orateur est notre collègue Mikkel Nikolajärvi.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja, arvoisa komissaari, hyvät jäsenet. Kiitos hyvistä alustuksista. Ilmastonmuutoksen torjuminen on totta kai ensiarvoisen tärkeää maapallomme tulevaisuuden kannalta. Minä tulen Pohjois-Suomesta Rovaniemeltä ja meillekin on totta kai tärkeää, että tulevaisuudessakin on monimuotoinen luonto ja kunnon lumiset talvet. Tätä aihetta on hieman tänään jo sivuttukin, mutta silti kysyn, koska ilmastonmuutos tulee vaatimaan myös paljon muutoksia esimerkiksi kulutukseen ja teollisuuteen, mikä tulee vaikuttamaan taas moniin ihmisiin ympäri Eurooppaa, joiden työpaikatkin voivat kadota. Ja totta kai uusiakin työpaikkoja syntyy, mutta se ei silti välttämättä auta heitä, jotka häviävät tässä muutoksessa. Siksi haluaisin kysyä komissaarilta, että miten komissio on sitoutunut edistämään sitä, että kaikki pidetään tässä muutoksessa mukana. Kiitos.
Merci beaucoup. Pour clôturer ce débat, nous aurons maintenant les interventions de nos orateurs ici au podium et je donne la parole tout d'abord à M. Rouchov.
Thank you very much, President, and thank you very much all the colleagues who intervened. I think that what we have heard here is can be summarized very shortly. All the interventions, all that we have heard is in line with what we thought would be the most interesting part of this conversation, how the local governments, how cities, how the regions participate in transition. Transition is what we need, transition is what takes time, but transition is the journey that we all need to join, and the point of departure is very well known. The point of arrival has been very well described in Paris Agreement. So now it is the way we get there is the discussion. And I'm sure that, and I agree with Mr. Martinez, that there is no one solution, no single silver bullet that would help everybody. There are different circumstances, but I think that everybody can agree that both the regions and entire Europe need this transformation. And without this transformation, we would be losing. As a matter of fact, we can look at the climate change like as the threat. Yes, it is a threat, but climate action is an opportunity. And any action that we can undertake should be an opportunity, and I'm sure that all those here in this committee who are the politicians, who are the decision makers on local level, know very well how to identify and use this opportunity, and we will need good examples and good stories, not only in Talanoa dialogue, but also in negotiations and in determination of national policies. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Et la parole est maintenant au maire adjoint, M. Skiba.
Answering on your question, I would like to emphasize, to highlight the change which is happening in Katowice, and referring to mainly Mr. Vlasak, who described his country, because we've got the similar problems. We've got a lot of similarities also in Poland and Czech Republic. You said that it isn't possible to do it at once, and that Germany, as I mentioned, also needed the time, like 60 years you mentioned. So I would like to emphasize that no more like 20 years ago, the majority of the train of Katowice, like 80%, was coal mining area. Nowadays, it is much more less than 50%, but we are still in the process. Throughout these 2 decades, we strived for, we do a lot of work to mark the city with the new strategy, which describe the areas in which we would like to develop, by which we would like to change from this money culture of industry, of economy, to multi-sources economy. So the Katowice aren't nowadays like the city encrusted with the high chimneys, but the city of Katowice is encrusted by the high but buildings. So the problem isn't nowadays the high emission, but the problem for example, in the issue of Katowice is low emission, and that's what we are trying to strive for. And for this, we need money, we need external funding. So I think the Katowice is also a good place, it's a good moment to discuss about the next EU financial perspective, about the new partnership agreement. We heard a lot about the goals which European Commission have about this limits of funding, about the like 1/4 part of budget which have to be sentenced on fighting against climate change. I would like to thank you for that, but I hope that the countries like Czech Republic, like Poland, should be the bigger beneficiary from this help. Thank you once again.
Merci beaucoup. Et la parole est maintenant au bourgmestre de Bonn, Monsieur Sridraran.
Thank you very much. First of all, I again want to thank you, President Lamberts, for inviting me to this panel. And I had the opportunity to be here an hour before we started our panel. And I learned how serious you take the environmental question, not only concerning the European level, but also concerning our municipal level, our cities and regional level. So thank you very much for doing so. And coming back to your question, Mr. Lammers, what can the cities do to just involve themselves into COP24? I think, first of all, the mayors and regional leaders, they have to come to Katowice, and they will come if they are not just visitors, if they are participants in this conference. And so it should be, we should be part, we mayors and regional leaders, we should be part of this conference. And you referred to the Bonn-Fidschi commitment. I just want to quote two of our commitments. It's commitment number 4, commit to work with the parties and identify concrete opportunities for greater climate ambition. I think this we can do in Katowice very well. And number 8 is prioritize and expand our support and partnerships across borders and continents. This is also possible because all the parties do meet in Katowice, and I hope that many of my dear colleagues of all over the world will be in Katowice as well. Thanks a lot.
Merci beaucoup. Et le mot de la fin revient à Monsieur le Commissaire. Vous avez la parole.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. President, for your invitation to participate in this meeting, and all of you who have taken the floor. We are tackling two processes in parallel. One at United Nations level, under the Convention, and the UNFCCC, and another one internally within the European Union, and both are extremely difficult. In Katowice, we must decide the transparency framework, the so-called Paris rulebook. Because if we don't have a system of monitoring, reporting, and verifying emissions, we will not know where are we. We will know how far are we towards our commitments, which are very ambitious. When we conclude the Paris Agreement, and I saw that we have committed to control global warming well below 2 degrees and make efforts to pursue to 1.5, I had the vision of the big challenge we have ahead of us. 2 degrees is a figure. Decarbonizing the world's economy is a challenge that we have never done before. And Mr. Sheffer said something which was very important. It will require a revolution in the new skills needed because there will new sectors of economy we don't know yet, but others, traditional sectors, will suffer much more than in the first industrial revolution. So this is a major challenge, fighting climate change. And in Katowice, we must succeed with the Paris rulebook, because we must go to the second phase. We were in the political phase deciding the objectives, but now is the time to implement our commitments. And some of you have said, well, Mr. Van der Nato, sorry for the name, but he was saying very clearly, we would have liked much more ambitious commitments. But we Europeans can be proud that the national determined contribution to the European Union is, at the moment, by and large, the most ambitious. At least 40% reduction of emissions. If you see the 179, this is the more ambitious by and large. It's insufficient. But in Paris, we didn't establish a system to achieve being well below 2 degrees or 1.5 in 2020. We decided a system, a dynamic system of raising the level of ambition over time to achieve during the century full decarbonization, net zero emissions, even sinks of emissions. But we developed countries must be faster to be on the lead of innovation, on the lead of building capacity, on the lead of solidarity with developing countries, and we must act faster. That's why in 2050 we have to deliver a mid-century strategy, which will be probably a very important instrument. So we have now the challenge to implement. And we are today in the position, because of the discussions in the trilogues amongst the Council and the Parliament, in which the tools we have to reduce our emissions are much more important than the ones we had when in the October 2014 Council we agreed to the objective of 40%. Now we have 32% renewable, 32.5% energy efficiency, and that means that we can raise the level of ambition before the COP and say we will do more, 45. And it will be very important that we become the major economy who first does the exercise of raising the level of ambition. And I expect that the October Council, Member States will be brave enough to raise the level of ambition and send a new NDC to the United Nations. But then we come to how we seriously on the ground implement our commitments. And that's the difficult thing, and how we have to integrate local governments. It's very clear that with the challenges we have ahead, we need enhanced cooperation and coordination between governments at all levels, civil society, private sector, regions, local cities, municipalities. It's absolutely clear, because this is a major challenge. And that is why I was very insistent when we delivered the Clean Energy for All European package that there was a powerful governance. Because we have European targets. We don't have binding national targets as we had under the Kyoto Protocol. And if you don't have binding national targets, and you just have European targets, you need a very strong governance. And in order to have a strong governance, it has a governance with lots of participation of the regions and the municipalities when you deliver your integrated clean energy and climate action plan. For the first time, Member States have to deliver integrated plans, climate and energy. It's a difficult exercise, because sometimes the dialogue between the energy ministers or the environment ministers are not very easy amongst Member States, and we all know what happens, and I can tell you long stories of what I see in the environment councils of ministers and the energy ministers. But now they have to come together and deliver. And there was a question saying, well, why having European objectives, why not have a bottom-up approach? Do you imagine, any of you, if we have said, well, we have a 40% reduction emission targets, what is willing on a voluntary basis everyone going to do, and we don't have targets for renewables, we don't have targets for energy efficiency, we don't have targets for anything, we will never be there. We need targets, and we need governance. And we need that the governance is transparent, with the participation of the regions, with the participation of the municipalities, with the participation of the citizens, of industry, because this is a global challenge. And it's very clear and the rapporteur of the socialist section said very clearly, nobody is prevented to be more ambitious. For sure. For sure. But we have to create the conditions that people can become more ambitious. And that's why we need the multi-annual financial framework, and that we are streamlining climate action. And that's why we want that the regional development funds and the cohesion fund contribute to climate action, much more important, to facilitate those who want to be ambitious to have the financial means. This is a major challenge, and we Europeans must be the leader. And we are going to face a challenge with mobility, with electromobility. I was fully disappointed when we launched the energy performance of buildings legislation, and I wanted that in every new building, commercial building or public building, there was at least a charging place for every 10 parking places. No government accepted that. And now we want to implement electromobility without charging infrastructure. How can we do that? How we are going to assist the regions and the municipalities to develop charging stations in order that electric mobility becomes a possibility and we have better air quality? These are the real challenges on the ground. And that's why it's very important that the regions and the municipalities are there when the member states discuss and prepare the national integrated energy and climate action plans. This is a new situation. It's a new governance. So that's on the plans. And on the future. On the future, we have our actual targets, but we have to prepare a decarbonization strategy for mid-century, who has to analyze all the sectors of the economy and all the regions, and who has to analyze what supposes the energy transition and what are the impacts in the different regions, because they will not be the same. There will be, if you say, let's go for electromobility, what's happened with the regions which are specialized in the combustion engine, in producing diesel vehicles? If you say we are going to produce clean energy, what happens with those regions who are economies which are based on coal and generate the energy with coal? So we have to analyze all the impacts and see all the means we will need to make just transitions in all the sectors that will be affected for the revolution in the transition to clean energy that the Paris Agreement supposes. The Paris Agreement is not just an international agreement. No. The Paris Agreement obliges all of us, governments, regions, cities, citizens, companies, to change our mindset, to change our, patterns of conduct, to establish new ways of using energy, less energy, clean energy. And that is going to be a big challenge. So I very much welcome the report that this committee has done on governance after 2020, because it has lots of ideas on the table, the possibility of the involvement in planning, the establishment of contributions by subnational authorities. All of it is of enormous interest. And there was one thing very concrete, and I want to finish with it. Somebody told me that there will be a delegation of 8 members of this committee going to the COP24. This is going to be a difficult COP. I have lots of trust in the Polish presidency, but it will not be easy. In the dialogues we have had in the Ministerial on Climate Action that the European Union conveyed with China and Canada to prepare the ground, things will not be easy on the transparency framework. Also, the financial elements of the Paris Agreement will be on the table. We have to demonstrate that we are delivering on our $100 billion commitment and that we will give solidarity. And there, the Europeans, we are placed in a very well position, because we are those who provide more public climate finance and grants to developing countries. $20 billion in 2016, more than 50% of the global public climate finance. But there will be, the element of finance will be difficult. I will meet with the members of this committee, the delegation here. I will keep them daily informed of what's happening. We will have that kind of dialogue, and it's going to be a very interesting one, because as all the important COPs, the COP24 will be challenging. I must say that Poland is preparing it with extreme professionality, and I have lots of trust in the Polish presidency, and we all will support the Polish presidency to have a major success. Because if we agree the Paris rulebook, if we are able to establish a good transparency framework, we go to the implementing phase, we will build capacity for developing countries, we will start reducing emissions all over the place, because this is not a European exercise. It's meaningless that we are responsible of less than 11% of the world emissions, make fundamental efforts if the rest of the world is not doing that. So this is a global process. We have to have very good rule books. We have to give financial assistance, technology transfer, capacity building, and doing this exercise together. We have a single planet, and we have to save it with the efforts of all the members of the Convention. Thank you so much.
Merci, Monsieur le Commissaire, pour ce message à la fois fort et ambitieux, aussi pour la proposition de coopérer intensément dans le cadre de la prochaine COP. Nous en venons maintenant à la fin de notre réunion. Merci beaucoup encore une fois à vous tous d'avoir participé ici pendant aussi longtemps à notre débat. C'est vraiment très réconfortant pour nous aussi et pour les membres qui ont... Juste pour ne pas prolonger, 3 secondes encore. Je suppose que vous êtes d'accord avec le point concernant les nouveaux membres du bureau qui sont dans vos documents. Vous avez aussi les informations sur les nouveaux membres. Il n'y a pas de divers, je suis certain, et je peux dès lors vous annoncer que la prochaine réunion aura lieu du 8 au 10 octobre. Merci beaucoup à tous ceux qui ont préparé notre plénière. Merci beaucoup aux interprètes et à tout le monde, bonnes vacances.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very